Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then, the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brittany Lawrence. So if you've been tuning in to this podcast for a bit, you know I like themes. I don't do it all the time, but I like them. This week, I'm going to sprinkle in some world record talk, because apparently 2020 has been really good for world record breakers. That's one of the things on my bucket list, actually. I don't know if you guys have a working bucket list, but mine is always evolving. But some things have been on there for a long time. Some of them should be simple. Go viral, which I've got semi-close to on TikTok with a cute video of my daughter, because apparently that's the key. Babies. Cute ones. But that one is still a work in progress. I also want to hold a world record. This one is harder, though, because I have absolutely no idea what I could do. I'm definitely one of those people who's good at a lot of things, but not really good at any of them. I need to pick something and hunker down on it. But yeah, I've had a lot of inspiration this week. So when I decide what my attempt at history is going to be, I'll let you know. And we'll track my progress together. With that being said, we're going to start off today with a couple of women who recently set the world record for the fastest time to circumnavigate the world on a tandem bicycle. And a story that involves a car chase, foot chase, and naked river floating. There's a lot going on. Then an unfortunate mix-up with a country flag forces B&B owners to rethink their decor. And we'll close out our first segment with a fox who steals things. Well, he really only steals one thing, but she steals a lot of them. If you stick around to the end of the show, I'm going to count down the top 10 world records that have never been beaten. Because I like themes. So let's go. Our first story is simultaneously really cool, but also so unbelievable. Tandem bicycle. Are there people out there who get along so well this could actually happen? I mean, I love my husband an incredible amount, but I can't imagine the pure disaster that would be. Once, when we were younger and had way too much confidence in our abilities, we took a trip together. And one of the endeavors we planned was to go to Carlsbad Caverns. It's a 1.25 mile hike down and up. The down is perfectly fine because, you know, it's down. But the up, that's a whole different story. It's incredibly steep. We're talking a grade of 15 to 20%. We started up and about halfway through, I was feeling pretty terrible. He wasn't doing great, but obviously better than I was. We get about 3/4 of the way and I'm near death. He looks at me and says, You want me to give you some advice on how to push through it. Yo, I did not. I absolutely did not want his advice. If I was coherent enough to say words to him at that point, none of them would have been nice or appropriate. The look I gave was apparently enough for him to understand his grave mistake. However, and he instead stopped and waited with me while I regained myself. We made it out and have never spoken of that terrible climb again, except to agree that if we take the kids, we will use the elevator going up. So, yeah, I can just imagine the rage-inducing moments we would encounter on a tandem bicycle. That's what I'm getting at here. So, 54-year-old Kat Dixon and 55-year-old Raz Madsden, along with having amazing names, just recently smashed the original circumnavigation record of 281 days by accomplishing the feat in 263 days. They started from Oxford in June of last year and finished a few months ago in March, shortly before the coronavirus lockdown. The route followed was 18,263 miles long. The exact time was 263 days, 8 hours, and 7 minutes. Their travels took them through 25 countries. They faced numerous setbacks such as European heat waves, Asian monsoons, and Australian bushfires. We've talked about my hatred of high heat before, so the first one would have been enough for me to throw in the towel, which may be why my world record hopes may be squashed before they begin. Some things I just can't abide. It became even more complicated for Kat and Raz when they were nearing the end of their trip and the travel ban began. In a joint statement, they said, "The experience was incredible and certainly not without its challenges, most notably racing to make it home as borders closed behind us due to the coronavirus pandemic." They were able to make it back, however, and in plenty of time to beat the previous record set by UK cyclists Edward Collier and Lewis Pearl Snellgrove last May. Miss Dixon, a lawyer from Yorkshire, and Miss Masden, a motor neurone disease nurse consultant at Oxford University Hospitals, have raised more than £40,000 for charity. And in what I can only assume was a statement sent out specifically for me, they said, "Setting the world record really was the adventure of a lifetime, and we hope that it will inspire others to believe that anything is possible if you follow your dreams." So obviously they want me to get practicing on my eating Jell-O with chopsticks dream ASAP. And on dreams, I know I hear this a lot from both sides of the aisle. If so-and-so gets elected, I'm moving to Canada, and exactly 0 of any of them have actually done that. Though this next dude certainly tried. I mean, not well, but he definitely tried to try, which is something. It all began with a phone call from the Stevens County Sheriff's Department to the Grand Forks Royal Canadian Mounted Police on Friday at around 1 a.m. to warn them that a stolen vehicle had entered Canada through the closed Port Cascade border crossing. According to the press release, American officers had attempted to stop the vehicle in Kettle Falls, Washington. They had successfully disabled the wheels using a spike belt, but the man was not to be deterred, and he continued to drive as he rammed through barriers at the border. Eventually, he abandoned his vehicle and took off on foot. RCMP was able to locate the car, but not the accused, until later that day when he had apparently returned close to the area where the car had been abandoned. If you listen to my last podcast, this is the second incidence of a criminal returning to the scene of a crime. If you're a criminal and you happen to be listening, this is your free bad guy lesson. Don't come back. It never works. The accused resisted arrest and eventually jumped into the Kettle River and floated for 2.5 hours. Here's the really amusing part to me of this whole story. So at this point, no one wants to go in the river, right? Because it's a huge river. But it's also not going super fast, so it's not like the guy is going anywhere. So Grand Forks and Midway RCMP walked along the riverbank to track this man, just like the most casual foot chase ever. Also, the guy was stark naked. I have no idea if he was naked the whole time or just once he jumped in the water, but I guess no one was in a huge hurry to arrest him. You know, the naked river guy. According to Vic News, once the river narrowed, an RCMP officer, along with some Good Samaritans, were able to go into the river and escort the man back to shore, where he was taken into police custody without further incident. This is one of those stories that desperately needs more information. I want to know what this guy's endgame was. Was it pure crazy, or was he just quarantined out and needed some new scenery? I'm not sure what Canada immigration policy is, but I think there has to be an easier way than that. There's only one picture of this guy floating around, and for some reason I think it's ridiculously funny. Just some dude floating in this huge river, naked and alone, looking off to the side where I'm assuming authorities are shouting him all sorts of unheeded orders and warnings. I've heard the Kettle River is awesome floating in July, so maybe that was the whole thing. Just getting that last sliver of joy, grabbing it by the horns, and floated with it. Who knows? I'm invested now, though, so hopefully some information will follow about his intent. Or I'll just do what I always do and create a laughable backstory. Either way. In an equally as insane line of thinking, but a lot less endearing, the Norwegian owners of a Michigan-based bed and breakfast have all but been forced to remove the Norwegian flag they were flying outside their building after being accused repeatedly of promoting racism. Why? How could this happen? It seems that people driving by have been mistaking it for a Confederate flag. This is a true story, guys. Look, I talked about this a couple podcasts ago, the spread of misinformation, the believing first without research, or the listening without hearing, looking without seeing. Kirsten and Greg Offenecker own the Nordic Pineapple, which is by far the best name for a B&B I have ever heard. They moved into their Civil War-era mansion in 2018 and hung both the American and Norwegian flag to honor both their country of residence and the country of heritage. Seems simple and innocent enough. As of last week, they have removed both flags. The Norwegian flag is a red flag with a blue cross superimposed on a white cross. So basically, the Norwegian flag has the same colors as the Confederate flag. But that's basically where it ends. The Confederate flag has an X with stars. I don't see it because I grew up with the Norwegian flag, Kirsten Offenbecker said. To me, they are two distinct flags. I was actually blown away by this story. It would literally never have occurred to me that the flag was the Confederate flag. And it seems stranger that anyone would, but it apparently was so much of a problem it is affecting their business. The community has rallied around the couple, asking them to put the flag back up, but they have said they won't do it until they can be sure no one will make the mistake again. I don't know what that would look like aside from another flag that says, "We're Norwegian, dummy." The couple wrote in a July 20th post on the Nordic Pineapple's Facebook page, "We love being members of the St. John's community and are heartbroken to have had to make this decision. Given the current cultural climate and the idea that people are judging us based on the misconception of the national Norwegian flag versus the Confederate flag, this is what is best for our family and our inn." In an equally hilarious and sad addition to this story, people have even accused the building itself of being a fragment of racist Confederate history. In reality, the building was built in 1861 by Oliver Spalding, a breveted brigadier, Union general, and attorney. I think oftentimes people forget that there were literally two sides in the Civil War. A Civil War-era building does not always mean Confederate. It all comes down to people needing to take a big, deep breath and take a bit more time to react. Google, Alexa, Siri, any of those could have told you what flag you were actually looking at. Kirsten Offenbecker said in a quote from the Lansing State Journal, "We've gotten a lot of support since taking it down, but we took it down because we weren't getting support," which is simultaneously weird and sad. If you need a bit of a chaser after that last story, me too. So let's go to Germany. Residents of Berlin's southwestern Zellendorf neighborhood were very confused when their shoes began vanishing. It was happening throughout the town. After a thorough investigation, the shoe thief turned out to be none other than a fox. An adorable, fashion-forward fox. The fox had apparently stolen hundreds of shoes at this point. The fluffster didn't seem to be on... Boop! The fluffster didn't seem to be into one type of shoe in particular. All sorts of shoes had gone missing. Slippers, sandals, sneakers. They were being stolen from outside. Here's my question, though, and this could very well be a cultural thing. I don't know. Do people really keep any amount of shoes outside? I mean, I understand if you're a take off your shoes before walking around in the home person. I get that. But just leaving your Nikes outside the front door? It made me think of being in Costa Rica. My husband and I stayed in this treehouse in the rainforest, and we were informed multiple times to never put your shoes on without looking in them first. Maybe that stuck with me a little too well because leaving your shoes outside seems like you're just asking for spiders. It finally took one local resident speaking up to unearth the truth about the shoe thievery. Christian Meyer posted on a local message board about his missing running shoes. Turns out he wasn't the only one who had been victims of the fox crime. Eventually, Meyer spotted the fox on a patch of wasteland in the district and managed to snap a picture of the creature, caught red-handed with a pair of blue flip-flops in her mouth. Upon further investigation, Meyer also uncovered the fox's haul of multicolored footwear. There was everything from lady shoes to trainers, said a local police spokesman. We found between 110 and 120 so far. It seems a vixen stole them for her cubs to play with. Sadly, Meyer has yet to find his lost running shoes, but 3 other pairs have been successfully reclaimed by their owners. I am absolutely offended by this. Y'all better give that fox back her shoes immediately. That baby worked hard for those. You just stole from that mama's babies. If y'all don't start some local tradition of leaving shoes for the fox fairy every year on some local holiday, I will have lost all faith in the goodness of humanity. I don't know who I need to write to. Who do I need to call? This is a wrong that needs to be righted. According to local authorities, they are not planning to post any charges on the culprit, which is encouraging, but I've got plenty of old shoes I could donate. If someone wants to start some sort of shoe GoFundMe, I'm ready. We've made our way through some pretty solid weirdness so far. When we come back, we'll enter a real-life monkey uprising, figure out why the Joker was in New York, learn about a new world record for the fastest time for solving a Rubik's Cube, but while doing something entirely unnecessary at the same time, and robotic cat pillows, because why not?
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we traveled the world to hit up some weird stories and world records like tandem bike riding around the world, naked Canadian river floating, flag confusion, and adorable sneaky foxes who are only trying to care for their sweet, fluffy fox children and are thwarted by an uncaring humanity. Or something like that. Later on in the show, we're going to be counting down the most bizarre world records. Let's get going. I mentioned Costa Rica earlier on in the first segment, and I feel like I need to mention it here again. We went to Costa Rica on our honeymoon, and I was super excited about a lot of things. But the number one thing on my list, I'm talking the thing that was the most important that we accomplished while in the rainforest, was to see a monkey. I wanted to see a real monkey in the wild doing real monkey things. It was imperative. I also have a friend who used to work with all manner of animals in various ways throughout her life who informed me that I should be more careful around monkeys as they are sneaky and spiteful. I didn't let her dull my sparkle though, and during our trip we did indeed travel to what we will forever call Monkey Island, and I got to see tons of monkeys. There's a video, and if I can find it, I will post it because I love it. I did not have the evil monkey experience that my friend warned me about, but that conversation did come to mind when I read this next story. According to multiple records, baboons at a popular safari park have been spotted with knives, screwdrivers, and even a chainsaw. As in, baboons have decided their time of being a sideshow is up, and they are taking matters into their tiny hands. You know, I'm actually not sure how big a baboon's hands are, and I just looked at a picture to be sure, and baboons aren't actually very small, so, their hands. Anyways, the primates at Knowsley Safari Park in Myerside are well known for their destructive ways, and there are plenty of pictures online of them pulling things from visitors' cars. It's actually super weird that this place exists. Why would you drive through some place where you were going to get robbed by a primate? But now, some staff are concerned that the baboons are being given weapons for a laugh by park-goers. According to the Sunday Times, one worker told the newspaper, "We're not sure if they are being given weapons by some of the guests who want to see them attack cars, or if they're fishing them out of pickup trucks and vans." The worker said the animals sometimes go into people's toolboxes to grab what they can, adding one of the baboons was seen lugging around a chainsaw. According to Yahoo News, yet another employee said some had been found with knives and screwdrivers and also questioned whether the baboons were being armed by visitors on purpose. But the management at the park is fighting back at the rumors, stating that the baboons being armed with weapons was likely an urban myth, and that stories had grown in exaggeration as they had been shared to make objects found in the animal's enclosure seem more exciting and unbelievable. I mean, I get it. Yell fake news all you want, but I've seen the photos. I don't think it's unlikely at all that these guys are finding more dangerous booty to use in their obvious coup. Knowsley, which is home to animals including lions, tigers, and rhinos, reopened on June 15th, and despite their website reassuring everyone that COVID security measures are in place and reminding guests that if you take a drive through our baboon jungle, we're unable to return any car parts that our cheeky baboons may take, they made no mention of arming yourself for the uprising. So I'm assuming at this point the zoo is actually run by the baboons themselves. Drive at your own risk. In a completely different turn of events, and in a nod to another podcast where people on a swan float found themselves needing to be rescued in New York City River, Fox 29 reported a man dressed as the Joker was seen jet skiing on the East River in New York City on July 25th. In a video uploaded to Twitter, a man dressed as the infamous DC Comics villain, the Joker, is shown riding the waves near the Manhattan Bridge. The now viral video has amassed over 25,000 retweets and 100,000 likes. New York is a strange place, man, read the tweet. I think I saw the Joker on the water today. It seems that the Joker is no stranger to the East River. Last August, similar footage of the villain cosplayer jet skiing went viral on Twitter. I'm assuming it's the same guy, which just means one day this dude woke up and was like, yep, it's Joker jet ski day. And then the next year he woke up with the same feeling and just couldn't be denied. I think it's even more fitting for 2020 as it already feels like we're just constantly in the middle of some super villainous plot of world domination. I mean, just come out with the demands or something already. I want out. The costume Joker was pretty on point with a full face of makeup and the trademark purple coat. His makeup was much more thoughtful and well done than the recent meme-worthy photo we were given of Mark Zuckerberg on an electric surfboard with at least 2 inches worth of sunblock on his face. I get it, dude. I'm a redhead. If anyone can understand your concern, it's me. But there's a limit. There's a line. And that line is becoming a mime. To be fair, Zuckerberg was likely wearing zinc oxide-based sunscreen, which acts as a physical sunblock from sun rays hitting your skin. Basically, it's the same conceptually as wearing a mask, which at this point he probably would have been better off doing. I had never heard of this, and considering Zuckerberg and I share the same fair complexion, I was surprised I hadn't. Though here's the thing. I get that most sunscreens are chemical-based, and that's like a huge no-no in the health-conscious community. I also don't know if I could handle just straight up walking around looking like Mrs. Doubtfire and still feel super confident in my life choices. Now, someone who is very confident in their life choices and at a very young age is 14-year-old Evan Bletcher, who decided that he could do 2 things really well in life, and that was bounce on a pogo stick and quickly solve Rubik's Cubes, which are both impressive in their own right. But he decided to take it a step further and do them both at the same time. Bleacher said he was leafing through the 2020 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records when he discovered there was an entry for fastest time solving a Rubik's Cube on a pogo stick, and the record seemed within reach. It seems crazy to me that this was the record that seemed within reach to him. He's a teenager. I'm sure there is like a how many Takis can you eat while asleep record or something, which seems reasonable. I went downstairs, got my pogo stick, and beat it on my second attempt, Bleacher told the Boulder Daily Camera. Just like that? I mean, I really need to get a good read-through of the record book because there has to be something on there I can do quickly. This kid is just out here casually beating an actual difficult one, and my bucket list is looking really ashamed of itself right now. Now, Despite the claim he beat it on his second try, that's not really how Guinness works. There's a whole bureaucratic process, as most things do, and it was 3 months before he actually attempted it for Guinness. Evan and his father Herb requested an application from Guinness and then found out there was a 30-page guidebook with all the rules for actually breaking a record. The teenager said it was 3 more months until his official attempt. Requirements included witnesses, video evidence, and stipulation that a new cube be used after each attempt. Some 30% of the applications are actually rejected because they don't provide sufficient evidence. So we were getting kind of nervous about getting everything, the senior bleacher said. A second hurdle Evan ran into was the fact that by the time he was ready to make his official record attempt, the record had already been beaten. It went from 22.8 seconds to 18.642 seconds. Not one to be deterred, the young teen absolutely destroyed it. He has made his way into the record books with a time of 16.71. I actually really love that this is how this kid is spending his quarantine. I was trying to think about what I would be doing if high school me had been forced into a pandemic quarantine. It would probably involve a lot of Twizzlers and Price is Right, which is a lot less impressive. But it did get me thinking. Apparently there isn't any sort of Guinness record involving Twizzlers. Maybe this is my ticket to getting in the book, just making up something ridiculous, like the most Twizzlers eaten while hiding in a closet from your children so they can't complain that they want some, but also spit it out when you let them try one and they don't like it, but will keep asking you for one over and over again because maybe that bite just wasn't indicative of its actual taste. I could do that one. Our next story is also something I feel like I could relate to and perhaps find very useful, and as of today, could actually purchase. A kubu, or a petite kubu, which is literally a robotic cat pillow. It's both a therapy robot and designed for people who can't have pets. It's basically a pillow with robotic cattail that responds to physical interaction with the user. It sounds creepy, but I want one so bad. So here's the saddest story ever. After having my third kiddo, I developed these super severe allergies. And if you're wondering what's going on with my voice today, that's it. If you didn't know that postpartum onset allergies were a thing, they totally are, and they suck. So as a person who has had pets all their life and really never suffered from allergies, I was devastated after going to get an allergy test and finding out that at 35, I was now allergic to everything, including cats and dogs and literally anything else in the world. My voice is so bad today, and all I have done is nothing. I stepped outside once, and that was my downfall. So, yeah, kubu. And now petite kubu. This tail-wagging device is used for therapy at senior care facilities and for just your average cuddle-desperate individual who can't keep pets due to allergies or pet rules at their home. In the newest version, the tail responds to sound as well as touch, and you can feel a heartbeat and hear a faint purring from within the fluffy body. Yukai Engineering will be using Indiegogo to take international pre-orders for the petite kubu. The campaign begins today, July 30th, and will run until September 28th, and shipment will begin in December this year, just in time for Christmas. If I don't have this adorable fluffy pillow under my tree, I may question if anyone really loves me. Prices on the Mini Kubu will range from $60 to $80 with various color options, including gray, brown, black, and white. They will also be selling the regular Kubu, which features a more realistic cattail and will be on sale for $135, which is cheaper than the usual $149. According to Engadget in May, the Petite Kubu raised 13.3 million yen, or about $125,000, from 1,300 backers in Japan. According to Yukai Engineering CEO Shunsuke Aoki, the COVID-19 outbreak in Japan helped boost Kubu's local sales, so he believes it's the same phenomenon for the Petite Kubu's local crowdfunding campaign. The crowdfunding success in Japan really goes to show how people are increasingly turning to robots for emotional comfort, and how it's becoming normal to adopt robots into their lives, Aoki said. People also seem to be embracing this new human-robot symbiotic relationship more while in self-quarantine. They are hoping to have the same success internationally with their Indiegogo campaign, and I can almost guarantee you people will go for it. It's cute, it's soft, it's quarantine friendly. Hopefully things will look a lot different in the world by the time December rolls around, but if not, we all may need something soft and cuddly to lament to. My oldest daughter expressed concerns about Santa needing a mask this year. My mother actually made him one, so we've got that covered, but that doesn't bode well for my 5-year-old's confidence level on where we're going to be come Christmas time. So there's that. Well, we've got sufficiently weird during this segment of the show. When we come back from break, we'll head back to Norway for some happier and ultimately more palatable newsworthy records, and another world record holder as the oldest person to be a flight instructor, which is really cool but also kind of terrifying. And in terrible COVID news, one man gets his smell back. Kind of. He just can't smell anything good. And in better corona news, there may be a cure, and it's adorable.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And we're back. In our last segment, we found out the right and wrong way to do something cool. Dress up as the Joker and ride a jet ski? Cool. Mimes on electric surfboards? Not cool, no matter how much money you have. We learned that teenagers can actually be pretty impressive and do things like set records during summer pandemic break, and that baboons are not happy in captivity and are currently staging an uprising. We also got Christmas shopping handled, as everyone on my list is getting a robot cat pillow. Let's keep the weird going. Our first story is wonderful, and I am in love with it. It's another beaten record, this time by a Norwegian Elvis impersonator. Impersonator Kjell Henning Bjornstad, or Kjell Elvis, entered the record books by singing songs from The King for more than 50 hours. In 2019, there were around 350,000 professional Elvis impersonators worldwide, which is a significant decrease from previous years. But for Kjell Elvis, his love for the King is still strong enough for some record smashing. For the competition, Kjell was allowed to have a 5-minute break every hour and sip on water and smoothies. He set the record in an online competition by singing the hits for 50 hours, 50 minutes, and 50 seconds. He completed the feat at a local pub in central Oslo. He is actually the least pleased with himself out of all the records I've talked about on the show. "I'll never do this again," said the 52-year-old after he broke the record, recognized by the Guinness World Record. According to DW.com, Bjornstad began singing on Thursday morning and switched between sitting and walking around on stage. When he completed the full Elvis catalog, he started singing all over again. I was wondering about this. I mean, there is a lot of Elvis music to cover, but I was not convinced 50 hours worth of material. No word on how many times the routine had to be restarted. A nutritionist and a physician monitored Bjornstad, who was regularly served hot water with honey and lemon, which is actually what I'm drinking now because allergies are literally the worst. The singer was told to take it easy on the coffee and instead rely on smoothies, fruit, and energy bars to sustain his voice. As cool as this is, as a singer, this is kind of a scary prospect. It's honestly not the healthiest thing that you can do. Singing is kind of a workout if you're doing it correctly, which sounds super snooty, but I mean it. If you're just out there everyday karaoke singing and not focused on what you are intaking or singing from your diaphragm, you can easily destroy your voice long before 50 hours. It's actually really incredible that he managed to do it. Bjornstad could take a 5-minute break every hour. He was also allowed to save up the breaks for a longer pause. German singer Thomas Curtis Gaith in 2004 set the previous Elvis Presley singing marathon record of 43 hours, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. The Norwegian singer had already smashed 2 Elvis singing records before. In 2003, Bjornstad performed 26 hours nonstop. His favorite was An American Trilogy, and I've heard Teddy Bear quite a few times, Bjornstad's manager Helge Johansson told Norwegian news agency NTB, adding that the singer's voice, however, did sound increasingly hoarse during the final hours of the competition. Overall, it's just a really cool record to have set, and all of the proceeds and donations made from this week's marathon will go to fund a hospital for refugees in Myanmar. And to continue the record talk, 99-year-old California woman Robina Asti is now in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's oldest flight instructor and pilot. She also broke a second Guinness World Record as the oldest active pilot, so she was just out there destroying it this week. Asti gave her final lesson on Sunday and for decades has been loved by her students for her enthusiasm and tenacity. Asti gave her final flight lesson Sunday at Next Gen Flight Academy at Riverside Municipal Airport, and upon completion told reporters, "I love getting people to experience what it is like to lift off this earth. It is so good," she said. Brandon Martini, one of her students, explained, "She taught me a few things that I haven't learned in well over 1,000 hours, and it was kind of neat getting a new perspective from someone who has been flying so long." She stole the record from a 98-year-old man in Iowa. Asti said she wanted to show that senior citizens are still capable of making valuable contributions. "I hope I am able to still do the things that I love at her age." She's truly inspirational. Now, this did send me down a bit of a rabbit hole of oldest person to records, which led me to reading about the world's oldest cat. Kind of a weird transition, but that's how rabbit holes work. Apparently, the world's oldest cat was named Cream Puff and was born on August 3rd, 1967, and lived until August 6th, 2005, an amazing 38 years and 3 days. I had a Siamese cat named Natasha for 21 years, and I thought that was pretty incredible. The owner of Cream Puff, Jake Perry, lived in Austin, Texas, and was also the owner of the previous record holder, Grandpa Rex. So I feel like he knows something we don't as far as pet livelihood. We're getting closer to the end of the weird news today, and we're going to close off with some good news, bad news, pandemic news. Good news. A doctor who recovered from COVID-19 has now regained some of his sense of smell. Bad news. He can only smell gross stuff. Dr. Douglas Dietrich, a hepatologist at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, completely lost his sense of smell when he was infected with COVID-19 in March. After weeks in the ICU unit and months of physical therapy, the doctor told Fox News he is starting to recover and so is his sense of smell, but only for gross stuff. So basically, he can't smell baking cookies, but could smell rotten milk. "I took off my shoes and my socks and got a real whiff of my stinky socks," Dietrich said. "I rejoiced that I could smell again." At least he is finding some joy. I've touched on my unfortunate superior sense of smell before, and I don't think I could mentally handle if all I could smell was terrible stuff. At first, he didn't realize it was only terrible things he was able to smell, but when the physician's friend who was visiting him commented on how good Dietrich's orange smelled, the doctor realized he could not smell the fragrant fruit. Dietrich tested his smell further. "I tested my sense of smell by putting my face into a can of coffee. Nothing. I couldn't smell a thing," he said. That is super depressing. I am pretty sensitive to caffeine, so I try to stay away from it as much as possible, but the smell of freshly brewed coffee is hard to beat. I had anosmia, which is the loss of sense of smell, which is typical with COVID-19, the physician explained, adding that he discussed the specific return of only unpleasant-smelling odors with his neurologist. "Unfortunately, I learned from the neurologist that there are 2 pathways of smell, and one is for foul odors and one is for nice stuff. So far, only the stinky pathway has returned," he said. "I had no idea we separated the smells like that in our brain." Dr. Alfred Mark Ureta Jr., an ear, nose, throat specialist in Mount Sinai Hospital's otolaryngology department, I think I said that right, told Fox News that the novel coronavirus typically affects an infected patient's sense of smell. We think that the COVID-19 virus is attacking either the sensory organ for smell, called the olfactory nerve, directly, or the supporting cells around the nerve, he said. This causes inflammation or direct damage to the nerve that inhibits or limits the perception of smell. Ureta, who is also an assistant professor of otolaryngology, added. Ureta further explained this inflammation can, in some cases, alter the COVID-19 patient's ability to identify a smell, noting that some perceive different smells than before or even phantom smells. That's terrifying. There are many studies being done about coronavirus and its link to smell, including a recent one from Harvard University. Ureta's group at Mount Sinai Hospital is conducting its own research using scratch-and-sniff scorecards that patients with COVID-19 use to rate how keen their sense of smell is as it returns. Ureta said his group is currently studying the effects fish oil supplementation has on patients who lost their sense of smell due to the virus. The randomized controlled trial builds on a study out of Stanford that used fish oil to help post-surgical patients recover smell after certain surgeries. We are trying to expand on her research and using it in the large COVID population in New York City, he said. Ureta said the study may help a person's quality of life. Smell and taste are intimately connected, and slight alteration in smell can drastically affect the taste, the physician said. Research has shown that loss of smell in the long term can affect mood. As for Dr. Dietrich, he looks forward to one day smelling his morning cup of coffee instead of his sweaty socks, he said. In more adorable and helpful COVID news, llamas may provide the missing link for coronavirus cure, which is exciting. Y'all, I love llamas. I know that is a thing now and everyone is all llama obsessed, but I'm going to pull the hipster card and say I was loving llamas before it was cool. When my son turned 1, I was all excited to do a llama-themed birthday party until I realized that I was going to basically have to make everything myself, since llamas weren't popular yet and I couldn't just buy a set of decorations. I ended up making all sorts of llama-themed plates and napkins and hiring a llama petting zoo because I am just that amount of extra. Come at me. Now, you can find llama everything now, which I'm obsessed with. Scientists from the UK's Rosalind Franklin Institute have used Fifi, a local llama with specially evolved antibodies, to make an immune-boosting therapy. The resulting llama-based COVID-specific antibody cocktail could enter clinical trials within months. The development is published in Nature Structural and Molecular Biology. It involves engineering llama antibodies, which are relatively small and much more simply structured than the antibodies in our own blood. That size and structure means they can be redesigned in the lab. So basically designer gene therapy, like designer dogs, except for a possible pandemic ending. Professor James Naismith, director of the Rosalind Franklin Institute and the lead researcher, described the technique as akin to cutting a key that fits the coronavirus lock. With the llama's antibodies, we have keys that don't quite fit. They'll go into the lock but won't turn all the way around, he said. So we take that key and use molecular biology to polish bits of it until we've cut a key that fits. According to BBC.com, antibodies are part of what is known as the adaptive immune system. They are molecules that essentially morph in response to an invading virus or bacteria. Then, if you get reinfected, explained Professor Naismith, your body looks for any virus particles with antibodies stuck around them and destroys them. This type of immune therapy essentially boosts a sick person's immune system with antibodies which have already adapted to the virus. There is already evidence that antibody-rich blood taken from people who have recently recovered from the coronavirus could be used as a treatment. But the key trick with this llama-derived antibody therapy is that the scientists can produce coronavirus-specific antibodies to order. This small re-engineered part of the llama antibody is also known as a nanobody, said Professor Naismith. I've been telling my dad he needs to get a llama for his farm for basically ever. This is really just one more reason to do so. They are adorable and hold the key to this whole COVID mess. So instead of Big Pharma, we essentially have Llama Pharma, And I think if we can't agree on politics, we can all agree on llama pharma being infinitely better. Essentially, we're doing in the lab what all immune systems do in the body, Professor Naismith explained. And we can do this very quickly. So if the virus changes suddenly or we get a new virus, we can engineer new nanobodies in the lab. The team is aiming to test its prospective therapy in animal trials this summer, with a view to starting clinical trials later in the year. And that's it. When we come back from break, we will hit up the top 10 world records that have never been broken, and we'll see if any of those will be the one I need to take on.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And we're back. Thanks for hanging out, guys. In our last segment, we hit up some record breakers from the Heartbreak Hotel to 99-year-old flight instructors. People are doing amazing things. We also got the good and bad news on coronavirus. We might only be able to smell rotting food, but llamas might be able to fix it. So there's that. We're going to close out with some pretty cool records that may never get broken. So let's get started. Number 10, the world's tallest man and woman. There are plenty of people that many consider giants, but only one man has taken the record as the tallest giant in history. The tallest person ever born whose height has been medically recorded was Robert Wadlow. Though he was born to average-sized parents and weighed 8.7 pounds at birth, Wadlow was destined to stand above the rest of humanity at 8 foot 11.1 inches. Sadly, he only lived to the age of 22, though there was no indication he would have continued growing had he lived longer. The tallest woman ever known to live was Zhang Jinlian of Yinyang Village in the Hunan province of China. She stood 8 foot 1 inches at the time of her death in 1982 at the age of 17. She began growing abnormally at only 4 months old, managing to grow to a whopping 5 foot 1 before her 4th birthday. By the age of 13, she was already 7 foot 1.5 inches. Her record height was recorded by Guinness World Records as the tallest female ever documented. However, other women who were shorter were given a record for being the tallest woman alive at the time they were recorded. Number 9. World's largest office building. When people think of what might be the world's largest office building, they probably picture a skyscraper stretching to the heavens. But in reality, it's only 5 stories high. Of course, height doesn't matter. What does matter is square footage in terms of office space and personnel capacity. The building that set the record in 1955 and continues to hold it is the United States Pentagon in Washington, D.C., with more than 6.6 million square feet of total floor area. Of that, there are more than 3.7 million square feet of office space spread across 5 floors above ground, with 2 basement levels. There is more than 3 times the amount of space in the Pentagon than there is in the Empire State Building in New York City, and its numerous corridors stretched for 17.5 miles. Though, due to the 5 concentric rings built into its design, no 2 points in the building take more than 7 minutes to walk between. In terms of personnel, there have been more than 31,000 working at the Pentagon at one time. Number 8. The world's richest man. Adjusted. In 2020, the world's wealthiest man was Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, who had racked up $146.9 billion in personal wealth. While that might just buy everything Amazon sells several thousand times over, it's not the most popular wealth a single person has had in the history of the world when adjusted for inflation. The person who towered over Bezos in terms of personal wealth was none other than John D. Rockefeller, a man who controlled 90% of oil production in the United States. In 1913, his personal wealth was listed at $900 million. Of course, that was 1913 dollars. But when you adjust it for inflation and add the accumulation of wealth leading up to his death in 1937, Rockefeller's worth jumps to $418 billion. Nobody else in the history of the world could compare to that amount of wealth. Though it's difficult to compare him to someone like an Egyptian pharaoh or Augustus Caesar, so he holds the record of being the richest person in modern history. Forbes declared Rockefeller the richest person in history in 2006, when his adjusted wealth topped $305.3 billion, and it's only increased since then. Number 7. World's highest grossing movie, adjusted. In 2019, Avengers Endgame set a new record for being the highest grossing movie of all time, pushing James Cameron's Avatar into second place. Endgame earned an impressive $2,797,800,564 at the global box office. And while it's likely this record will one day be broken, the movie that holds the record when adjusted for inflation has been held by the same film since 1939. Gone with the Wind was insanely popular when it came out in 1939, having gone on to win 10 Academy Awards following 13 nominations at the 12th Academy Awards. The film managed to pull in $390 million at the worldwide box office, which would be a lot of money in today's economy. But in 1939, it was staggeringly high. When adjusted for inflation, Gone with the Wind earned the equivalent of $7.2 billion in 2020. Even more impressive is the number of tickets sold when compared to Avatar, which sold 78.3 million tickets. Gone with the Wind sold a staggering 225.7 million tickets when it came out, which isn't a number that any modern film can reasonably break. Number 6. The world's longest fingernails. If you've ever cracked open a copy of Guinness World Records, odds are you've seen a picture of Sridhar Chalal of Pune, India, and recoiled in horror from what you saw. That's because Sridhar Chalal holds the record for having the world's longest fingernails, which is a record he achieved by not cutting his fingernails for 66 years. Of course, having nails like that wouldn't make it possible to use your hand for much of anything, so he only grew the nails on his left while keeping his right hand neatly trimmed. When his nails were finally cut, they measured in at a disturbing 29 feet 10.1 inches. He began growing them out, or stopped cutting them, whichever makes more sense, when he was 14 years old. A teacher chastised him for breaking a nail, and from that point he stopped cutting them. Having nails that long on your hand isn't easy, and he suffered from a great deal of pain and sleeping difficulty as a result. He finally had them cut so that they could be put on display in Ripley's Believe It or Not in Times Square. Number 5. The world's most targeted person by lightning. You know the saying that lightning never strikes the same place twice? It's total BS, which is clear if you've ever learned what a lightning rod is. But be that as it may, the chances of getting struck by lightning at one point during a person's lifetime are 1 in 15,300. Now that's a pretty rare occurrence, to be sure. But what about getting struck by lightning more than once in your lifetime? Unless it happens a fraction of a second after the first strike, the odds are astronomical. But don't tell that to Roy C. Sullivan. He was struck 7 times, and he survived. His misfortune earned him the nickname the Human Lightning Conductor, and while a single lightning strike will often kill a person, Sullivan survived being struck 7 times, beginning in 1942 and ending in 1977 with his last strike. He wasn't unmarred by the strikes and racked up a list of injuries, including losing a toenail, both his eyebrows, a burn on his left shoulder, and his hair was set on fire twice. And his legs, ankle, chest, and stomach were burned. After surviving 7 lightning strikes, he died by suicide in 1983. Number 4. World's heaviest man. Some records you want to set, and some you don't. When it comes to weight, there is one man who weighed in much higher than anyone else in recorded history. John Brower Minnick set the record for being the heaviest human being ever recorded, and when he was at his heaviest, he weighed in at a massive 1,400 pounds. Minnick was never a thin man, and when he was 12 years old, he weighed 294 pounds. By the age of 22, he stood 6 foot and weighed 500 pounds. Minnick's weight became a significant factor in his declining health, and it was determined that his weight was due to a condition in which the body generates excess fluid. He was hospitalized for 16 months, during which he lost 924 pounds, which almost set another record that placed him with the second largest amount of weight loss to have ever been recorded. Unfortunately, a year later, he weighed nearly 1,000 pounds, and he was dead less than 2 years later. At the time of his death, he weighed 798 pounds. Number 3. The world's most decorated Olympian of all time. Getting a gold medal in any sport is incredibly difficult, as you have to compete with the best athletes from around the world, and you can only make an attempt every 4 years. Getting a single medal is an incredible achievement, which automatically classifies a person as being at the top of their particular sport. So for anyone who nabs more than one, it's a shiny declaration that they're the best person in the world in what they do. For Michael Phelps, that's certainly the case, as he currently holds the record for winning more Olympic gold medals than anyone else in history. Phelps racked up a mind-boggling 28 Olympic medals in total over the course of his athletic career. Of those, 23 are gold, 3 are silver, and 2 are bronze. Along with those impressive achievements, Phelps also racked up a large number of Guinness World Records, having set them for fastest swim long course, most silver medals awarded in a single Olympic swimming race, and many more, because he managed to secure multiple medals over the course of 5 Olympic appearances throughout his career. There's little doubt he will hold this record indefinitely. Number 2. World's most atomic blasts survived. When the United States dropped the first atomic weapon used in warfare on the Japanese city of Hiroshima, between 90,000 and 146,000 Japanese citizens were killed, either instantly or over time due to radiation burns and exposure. 2 days after Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima, another bomb dubbed Fat Boy was dropped on Nagasaki, and that blast resulted in the death of between 39,000 and 80,000. More than half the dead were killed on the first day of each bombing, and few people lived to tell the tale. One man witnessed both bombings, and his record is one that will hopefully never be broken. When the first bomb was dropped, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was on a business trip to Hiroshima, and he miraculously survived. After the city was destroyed, he returned to his hometown, which, sadly, was Nagasaki. He arrived just in time to witness and survive the second bomb, making him either twice lucky or twice unlucky. Given what he lived through and witnessed, Tsutomu Yamaguchi not only survived the war, but he also survived the century, living to the age of 93, having succumbed to stomach cancer in 2010. And number 1, world's record-holding record holder. For most people desiring to break or set a record, doing it only once is enough to boost the ego and give you something to brag about among your friends. That works for the vast majority of folks, but Ashrita Furman doesn't care about breaking one record. He cares about breaking as many records as humanly possible, which is why he holds the record for having the most broken records in history. Yes, he's a record-breaking record breaker and has broken more than 600 records in over 30 years. Not all of his records stand, so only about 200 currently, but that doesn't detract from his many accomplishments that prove there are all kinds of strange records Guinness has verified. The first record he broke was knocking out 27,000 jumping jacks in 6 hours and 45 minutes. And from there, he was hooked. He broke records for balancing a chainsaw on his chin, most fire torches lit and extinguished in 1 minute, most arrows broken with the neck in 1 minute, and hundreds more. Because he's racked up so many, it's unlikely anyone will devote the same amount of time and energy to break it, but you never know. And that's it. We've come around to the end of the show. Thanks for getting weird with me today. And as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. And if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night. Be good to each other.